And he said to me, you need to stop saying no for other people.
Oh,
stop saying no for it. And the idea is like, you say to yourself, you might have an idea that you want to talk to somebody about. Maybe it's making a movie or writing a book or creating a business. And you could say to yourself, oh no, I'm not going to go for that grant because they're going to say no, or no, I'm not going to go.
Oh my God, that is powerful.
Talk to people and talk this up because they're going to say no. And you so like that idea was like, all right, don't say no for other people. Obviously, no means no in certain context, but a lot of times you're just psyching yourself out. You're just saying to yourself, this is not going to work. This is not going to work.
Oh.
And hey, if it doesn't work, you learn why it didn't work.
Yeah, I love that.
The content presented and discussed is purely intended to be general and educational in nature and should not be construed as specifically tailored investment, financial planning, tax, legal, psychological diagnosis, or other professional advice.
I want to thank everybody for coming and listening to my podcast, or our podcast, Again, Wealth Management. And we have Abbey Durkin with us, Dr. Abbey Durkin, and myself, Manny Henson. And I'm a certified financial planner, and I help people from all walks of life understand the socio-emotional connections with their money. And we're going to talk about a wide range of subjects, perhaps talk about what's going on in the market towards the end. But we want to get in to another topic that we really have been focusing on, and that is failure. With a lot of people finding themselves in positions that they've never had before. Maybe you have a job loss, maybe you have a relationship that didn't work out right, or maybe maybe you're looking at what you did for a career. You spent some years climbing a ladder that you realize was perched along the wrong wall or something. And so I'm glad everybody's here. And so I want to first introduce Abbey. Abbey, how's everything going with you?
Oh, it's going great. I'm really excited to be here and to talk about this topic. It is 100% near and dear to my heart. So I can't wait to get into it. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. And so when you think about failure, what do you think is like the first thing that comes to mind? I know what comes to mind for me. I'm thinking about, oh man, it hurts. An emotional pain of just going for something and not working.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I mean,
that's the first thing you think about.
That definitely comes to mind for me as well. It's sort of like that opportunity lost, or the future that you saw for yourself not coming to fruition, whether it was a business venture or, especially in the world of entrepreneurs, which I'm in that world myself. Failure is something that you have to get used to. It could be dealing with rejection time and time again, having to just deal with the exhaustion of going back to the drawing board, and the pain of working with teams, because I know we've all probably had that experience in school of the dreaded group project, and like, it just can feel like you're out there on your own and you're not the weak link. You're not the weakest link by a mile. And yet it's like, it still fails. And so, yeah, for me, it's trying to turn that not only into a learning experience, but managing the demoralization that can come with failure. But I think what's really important is the story that you tell yourself and the way that you communicate that failure to other people, right? Because when we experience failure, if we internalize that as some kind of problem with our character, like, for example, I'm a failure, instead of, well, this project failed or this idea failed. Once you make that leap to it's me, then that's that slippery slope where you find yourself kind of in this pit, this paralysis of like, I'm not going to try anything new anymore because it's me. And when it's me, that's a really hard thing to fix. Like that's the biggest thing that there is us, our consciousness, like our efforts. And so I think it's really important for people to learn how to pick themselves up after a failure and then communicate it transparently, but positively to people that are in their circle, where it doesn't come out as this ho-hum situation, but more with an excitement. And most people would never associate failure with feeling excitement. They would associate it with exactly what you said, Manny, which is pain. But failure is exciting because it means that, you're on a journey, and your journey is discovering stuff that doesn't work. And it kind of reminds me when I was in school, I was going through my PhD program, and it was very science heavy, and a lot of experimentation was involved. And we were always looking for that ability to conclude something groundbreaking. All of us hungry, competitive students were like, we want to get it. And what was really interesting was I found a journal that specifically published results that weren't significant. They published the findings that were considered failures, right? And it was the Journal of the Null Hypothesis. I don't even know if it's still around anymore, but I absolutely love that idea, because it's just as important to find out what works as important to find out what doesn't work, right? And like, how many times did Edison try with that light bulb, right? And at the end, he's like, well, I found 101 ways or 1,001 ways of ways it doesn't work. And that was just as important on that journey of finding that light bulb that actually did turn on.
I everything you said just kind of resonates with me. I think when I was in high school, I had this oh crap moment where I was like really struggling, trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And, I wasn't necessarily the best at everything. And so what I did was I started thinking, even if I didn't have an answer to a question, if I was in class, I would always kind of raise my hand, because it would be a lot, those times, maybe you were that student. I'm not sure if you were that student where like the teachers or the professors asking a question and like nobody wants to say anything.
Yeah.
Because no one wants to admit that they don't know what the heck is going on.
Yeah.
I hate not learning. And so for me, it's like, all right, I'm gonna throw my hand up. If I guess, if I know it, that's great. If I don't know it, at least I learned something.
Yeah.
And so I kind of come at life that way.
Yeah.
I would hate to live life in a way where I didn't know what could have happened if I did X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
Because I was too afraid.
Yeah.
I mean, this is scary. This podcast might not work.
Right.
People might hear my voice and say, "Oh my goodness, I hate this."
Oh, that's impossible.
I'm going to be right for the right person. Yeah. I get it.
Yeah.
I'm in the way to some people.
Oh, no way. I don't believe it for a second. But yeah, like when you think about like the things that you've tried and failed, I think sometimes we're conditioned to stop trying after a certain period, and in a way we've got to understand what doors are closed and why they're closed, but not make that leap to internalize it in a way that stops innovation. Right. And I know Elon Musk is such a polarizing figure, but the way that he processes failure, I think, is really exciting, because it's something that he anticipates and he incorporates, especially, I think it was last week when the Starship blew up and people ran with it, with trumpeting, oh, look, see, it blew up. And he came back with, no, that was expected. And we have to, the only way that you understand the tolerances and the limitations is to push that envelope and learn to really accept failure as a part of learning and not as a part of who you are as a person. And so, do you have any experiences that you can share on how you picked yourself back up after a failure?
Oh my goodness. I remember when I first came out of college, I went to a really awesome company. It was very large, very stable, and I was doing everything I thought I was supposed to be doing, and then I kind of got stalled. And I had a couple of reviews that didn't seem like they were right for me, and I was kind of mad. I'm grinding. I'm like, oh my goodness, I can't do this. what am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? And none of this makes any sense. And so when I left and I went to another company, at that time, like I was doing, I was making more money every single year I worked since I got out of college. And then all of a sudden, like I'm working in this job and oh my goodness, this is harder. This is a lot harder than I expected it to be. And I got put on notice. I'm like, oh my goodness, never in my life would I be like, have an opportunity, to have a situation where I might lose my job. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I can't do this. And I was just stressed. But then I just dug in and I just realized that maybe if I change, tweak a couple of these things, tweak a couple of those things would work out for me. And I can never forget this. I was working with one guy who's like really, really good. He's a really sharp guy, great consultant. And I had call hesitation. Like I had hesitation with like reaching out and just talking to people. I do it for a living. I got a lot better at it, but at the beginning, that was a challenge for me. And he said to me, "You need to stop saying no for other people."
Oh,
stop saying no for it. And the idea is like, you say to yourself, you might have an idea that you want to talk to somebody about. Maybe it's making a movie or writing a book or creating a business. And you could say to yourself, oh no, I'm not going to go for that grant because they're going to say no, or no, I'm not going to go.
Oh my God, that is powerful.
Talk to people and talk this up because they're going to say no. And that idea was like, all right, don't say no for other people. Obviously, no means no in certain context, but a lot of times you're just psyching yourself out. You're just saying to yourself, this is not going to work. This is not going to work.
Oh.
And hey, if it doesn't work, you learn why it didn't work.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. I think another aspect, something that I failed at kind of recently, it was being told both like explicitly and implicitly that I wasn't good enough. And that like wrecked me. But then I had an opportunity to step back from that situation and evaluate who was giving me that feedback. And the people who were giving me that feedback hadn't been where I had been. They hadn't done any of the stuff I had done. They were giving me feedback from a place of complete inexperience. And one of my friends found this social media thing. It said, lions don't lose sleep over the opinions of sheep. And that was like, I was, and so there's a valuation process of the person who is giving me this feedback that I'm a failure. Do they have any credibility? Am I giving them more priority in my self-evaluation process than they deserve? And, when you're in professional settings, sometimes you can become a little bit numb or blind or maybe habituate and think, oh, well, hey, if we're all sitting around the same conference table, then certainly we're equals. Certainly we're peers because we're sharing this table. And that, my friend, is not the case. And once I stepped back and was like,
oh man,
who's telling me this? And then I thought, this is absolute nonsense. And this might sound corny, but that day I went back and I read my own CV to myself and I was like, I know what I'm doing. Like they're full of it. And, and that really helped me overcome the last, I guess, on the professional side, like the last failure that I had was these individuals, they don't have the creds to criticize me. And that was a strong move. And I had hesitated going there because I thought, wow, that's the most arrogant possible stance, but it was factual. And does that make any sense? Like, do I sound like a monster?
Oh no, it definitely no. I mean, I definitely understand that. And my biggest thing is like, when I first kind of started in my career, I was like, I can change people's minds. So like, oh, you don't like this? I'm gonna change your mind.
Yeah.
I can, come out with a vernacular jujitsu and help you understand like what my viewpoint is and change your, and I realized, there's so many other people in this world. There's so many people in this world, and all of them don't have to like you.
Yeah.
They don't. And if you want to do anything that's worth doing, in most cases, somebody's going to not like something about it. And that's a hard pill to swallow because I always like people to like me for some reason.
Sure.
It is what it is.
Well, and I think, I've failed financially too, and have had to then because finances, I think for 99% of us are a finite resource, and so when you invest yourself, when you invest your finances into something that doesn't work out, you have less resources to invest in the next thing going forward. And so there is a real consequence. There's a real consequence to failing financially, if you make a bad investment, or if you take a loan out on something that doesn't work, for example, or the returns are so slow or so minimal that you no longer have the resources to keep trying things, keep taking those financial risks, that failure has a real consequence to it. So while, you might have a good self-concept and you might say, I get that this failure isn't a reflection of me personally, but now I'm on a shoestring, whereas before I had yards of rope and now I'm just down to the very finite things that's going to keep my shoes on my feet. Coming back from that kind of financial failure, can you speak to that? Have you helped anybody come through a financial misstep?
Yeah. So I think the biggest part of that is one is recognizing that you could have done something differently, and then trying to grasp how you're going to choose to work with someone. I actually love this book, Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman.
Ooh, good one.
I'm not sure if you have ever read that book, but he talks a lot about where is expertise? What is expertise? How do you define it? Different ways that people manipulate people to pretend that they have it. And I see a lot of people, and I want to diss anybody who's really legitimately trying to help people and trying to grow at the same time. I'm still growing at the same time, even though I've been doing this for 15 years and I have a background and studied finance academically. But there's some of the behaviors and bravado that we resonate to, or we look at because we assume that maybe somebody was with confidence or says things a certain way that are more legitimately
the power
providing answers. And so we have this mental, we have this ape brain that from an evolutionary standpoint, it's looked at, has evolved over how many years that doesn't really serve us in certain financial capacities. Ooh. So classic example is, everything's either or.
Yeah.
There's a fear of missing out. If I don't get this Bitcoin or this kind of investment, this is going to go away and I'm not going to see these opportunities. Or if things are going well, they're going to continue to go well. I don't want to ever change anything. And so we fall in these traps where what feels psychologically comfortable is usually not the right answer. And so if something feels really psychologically comfortable in finance, or if it's a new idea, usually it's a bad thing.
Yeah. And I keep thinking of the finance bro and the Patagonia vest, and how that image of swagger leads people down this very well paved road to where. And so, people like you're talking about,
here's my Ferrari, and look at all these people that are
yeah.
It's like rappers, right? Look at all this stuff, right? I have this Ferrari and I have these people around me, and if you listen to me, if you hang out with me, there's things are going to be great.
Yeah.
And so Jordan Peterson is kind of a polarizing
person.
Yes,
for sure, polarizing.
People, but, he talked about the idea of that when you flaunt your extras, your wealth, and you flaunt things that maybe just comes from animals, right? Animalistic. And if I have so much stuff, then maybe I'm going to be a good person. I'm going to draw people to me. I'm going to draw mates, perhaps, to me. If I have all this stuff, I can afford to, do anything.
Yeah.
And so that's the mindset. And from a failure standpoint, once you had a bad experience with someone who's your financial partner or says that they're a financial partner, you're less likely to look at anybody in that light because you made a decision. You made a decision to choose this person. Maybe you chose it based on, you're my cousin, you're my uncle, or you're somebody else spoke highly to, but you can't, it's hard to make an objective opinion.
Yeah.
Because there's so many of us, right?
Yeah.
There's so many of us, and it's a legitimate issue.
Yeah. So, I think it's speaking to resilience after failure as well. Like how do you financially come back? And so you were saying a minute ago about sometimes the lesson is maybe having done things differently. And then another takeaway is understanding if you needed to rely on expertise, and how do you maybe swallow your pride and say, hey, this DIY thing is not going to work out. I'm not a contractor. Mm-hmm. I can't go to Home Depot competently and pick things out. And now the bathroom's a mess, so finances are similar in that sometimes people think that they can wing it and get in over their head because maybe they're swayed by that image, that persona that gets broadcast, and I think I was reading somewhere that the best performing creators on social media fall into a couple categories. The number one revenue producing creator content on Instagram and TikTok is people giving financial advice, followed by weight loss, right? And so both of these things are repeatedly like traps for how to fail. And people want that quick fix. They don't want to feel that failure. They don't want to yo-yo diet. They don't want to financially yo-yo diet. And so they're drawn towards people that have this allure, this promise of quick success. That's the diet industry. And sometimes that is also found in finance, like, Bitcoin, different cryptocurrency millionaires, things like that. And it's no joke because we saw FTX fail recently and big, and we saw Silicon Valley fail. And so when you're at the level of the person failing, it's tough to feel like you didn't just get rickrolled by these companies. And so the failure isn't yours. It's two parts of it. And so those you're on TikTok or you're on one of those social media pages, you're looking for that dopamine hit, that something, that aha moment that's really quick and easy. They want the easy button, right? But in reality, is a lot of things aren't easy. The best way for you to create wealth in America is for you to invest in yourself, have a really good education. Real estate speculation helps as well, right? And then having a consistent process that works for you, and then having time be your benefit and not trying to change things dramatically every other day. Yes.
But that doesn't sound cool, right? If somebody said that on TikTok or somebody said all that stuff to you, you're like, well, I could do that myself. And the other part is like, listen to Daniel Kahneman, right? He has this really interesting thought experiment where there's like a jar of I think M&Ms or something like that. Something where you have to kind of guess how many M&Ms in. So the first part is like how many M&Ms are in this jar. And the second part is considering all the people who are going to get estimates. Who do you think is going to be more likely to be accurate, yourself or other people?
Ooh.
And what do you think most people are going to say?
Oh man, most
people are going to say that they're going to be able to provide the best estimate, right?
Yeah.
And so that's the challenge. We're always kind of looking at. There's a home bias. There's a bias towards the familiar, what feels comfortable.
Yeah.
And then the other part of this is this. I kind of struggle with this, So I could be everywhere in anywhere, right? I could be on TikTok. To me, it's like I don't want to draw people who don't have that long-term view.
Yeah.
And if I struggle, if I'm not doing as well, do you consider that a failure? Do you consider that,
Yeah.
business wise, you don't want to, you have a vision of how you want to serve people,
Yeah.
but you have to stick with it. And you're making a conscious decision of not going about it other ways. So, I mean, it's a decision. You never know.
Yeah.
It's right. But
there was an NBA player recently interviewed, and it went viral. I can't remember the guy's name. Very, very eloquent, well-spoken guy. And he had just lost a game. And one of the reporters asked him if he viewed it as a failure. And he said, a failure, so let's talk about Michael Jordan. How many times, how long was Michael Jordan in the league? And how many championships did that guy win? So the reporter answered him, and he said, so are you saying that all the other years that he didn't win a championship, that he failed? Would you characterize Michael Jordan as a failure because he didn't win every single year? It's like 6 out of 9, right? And I think that's a good way to think about it, is you just keep working towards a goal. Like, you have to make progress, and discipline is not that sexy, because it's a grind, and it's difficult to get people to come on board with it. But I think maybe you get to that point where the grind does become appealing after you've gone through that trial and error and you're hurt. And you're like, everything I've tried isn't working. Maybe I need to ask my man, Manny, and get some advice.
Or think about the way you set up your decision-making criteria.
Yeah.
Right. Is the criteria that on who I spend what type of friends I spend time with based on my past experiences? Are those past experiences? I know it's kind of like trivial, but you got to break down your decisions into smaller parts. Like, what is it in your mind that's driving that decision? Is this an objective reason? Is this an objective part in the decision making process?
Mm-hmm. What would you give maybe 2 or 3 things for the everyman who's just got some kind of financial failure going on? Like, what are a couple things that a general person could do?
I think it all starts with just recognizing that we're all human, that there are other people out there that are experts, but more importantly, that you have to forgive yourself. And I think people who are jaded by the decisions that they make, whether it's mainly their decision or maybe someone else's, they might throw out the baby with the bathwater and just say, I want to do something myself. And that's okay. I think some people need to do things themselves, and I support people with that. Most of my clients do some kind of hybrid of getting support and working with different professionals and doing things themselves, and that's not a problem. But if it is a problem, and if you are struggling, it's time to cut bait, maybe fire yourself.
I love that.
And then, so it's all, that's. I've recognized. I remember one day my dad, he's a musician, and we were like trying to I was trying to help him soundproof his basement and everything. And I'm like, spending all this time, and he's telling me about all the time that he spent, going to Home Depot and arguing with people and kind of talking to this person. And I said, how long you been doing this? And he said, years. I'm saying, but if you worked with somebody who was like the expert, you pay a little bit more, but your opportunity cost is a lot lower because you have more time to do the things that you're great at. And so, like, if somebody can help you do something as just as good, I want to say better, but just as good, and you can get your time back and you can use that for something that is more profitable or more rewarding for you. Think about it that way. Think about it as not as failure, but a different direction you took.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then if your investments and you're doing really well, like some people are the opposite. They have the worst people that go to the casino are the people who went to the casino the first time and won. Right?
Oh,
if you ever, you would rather like lose the first time, because if you go to the casino and you won, you got a method, right?
Uh-huh.
It's something that's special about you, right? It's something that you no one else got.
Yeah.
You got it.
Yeah.
And so that's the same thing that happened with investments. I saw a lot of people in technology. Like, I know technology. I'm smarter than, most people in technology. I'm going to put my money in technology stocks because they're going to go up forever, right? Or, they day trade, and they day trade, have some wins, and then don't manage their risk appropriately. So don't sell, don't have an exit strategy, don't sell. So going back to like specifics, it's like, if you're in a buy, you're in a trade, okay, great. But have that be a smaller part. Don't blow up your portfolio just on a hunch on something.
Yeah.
And if you're going to trade, know what you're trading for, right? So you never trade, you never get into a position before you know where you're going to exit. And most people don't do that. They think, okay, well, let me let it ride and keep investing in it, or invest more in it, or hold it forever.
Yeah, and I think that's really important.
And that's not always the right thing to do.
That's really important what you're saying. Don't let one failure corrupt your entire philosophy. Don't change your whole method because one thing didn't work out. But I think it takes an objective person like yourself to help clients understand what to cut and what to keep, and what really was the thing that failed. What was it about their philosophy that is working is just as important as knowing what about their philosophy maybe led them down a path that wasn't very lucrative.
Right.
Well, this is awesome, Manny. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.
No, thank you. With you, it's always good having conversations. And we're going to have these conversations like this continually. And then there's going to be another segment, hopefully in the next couple of days. I'm going to offer advice to you people, you all the people out there in the podcast land who are listening. And so on my website, there's going to be a form where you can anonymously tell us a little bit about what's going on in your world. What are your challenges? What is something that you need to work through? And hopefully we'll pick your question and answer it live, not live, but answer it on our show. And so thank you all again for listening. And you know how to find me.
Yay!
We're at GammaWealthLLC.com. We're on Facebook. We're on LinkedIn. We're on Instagram. Hit us up.
Awesome.
Take care.
Bye.
The content presented and discussed is purely intended to be general and educational in nature and should not be construed as specifically tailored investment, financial planning, tax, legal, psychological diagnosis, or other professional advice. Any data cited is valid as of the date of presentation, but please know that such data are frequently subject to change. Any investment performance referenced is purely past performance, which is no guarantee of any future performance. Nothing contained in this course should be construed as an offer to sell, a solicitation of an offer to buy, or a recommendation of any security or other financial product or investment strategy. All investment, tax, and financial planning strategies involve risk that you should be prepared to bear. Investment, financial planning, tax, legal, and other professional advice is specific to each individual and entity, and you are highly encouraged to consult with professionals of your choosing before taking any action based on the contents presented or discussed herein.